Molly here. Today we're going to do things a little differently. The reason being that there really wasn't much to this story. And another reason being that other channels are doing scene-by-scene rundowns, so I'm not going to waste your time duplicating that this week. So, here we go. Disney Who, Season 1, Episode 6, Rogue. The episode begins in Bath, England, in 1813. I thought, oh, well this will be interesting because we're right in the middle of the War of 1812. As in, England was at war with the United States. However, I was going to be very disappointed because the war wasn't mentioned once. So, historical accuracy was certainly not on the minds of these writers, which leaves a history buff like myself extremely unsatisfied. I mean, this is a time travel show that doesn't even seem to be trying to be historically accurate. So, the episode begins in Bath, England, in 1813. The Disney Doctor and Ruby are at some party and actually reference the show Bridgerton, which I haven't watched because I don't watch historically inaccurate period shows. I don't like sloppy representation of history because for a lot of people, that show may be the only thing they ever watch about a certain time period. And it rubs me the wrong way when they don't even try to get it right. So Ruby and Disney Doctor are at the party. The Disney Doctor is scanning people, and he finds a guy who scans weird and goes off to flirt with him. Ruby goes off with the hostess of the party to be paired off with suitors. There's a portrait on the wall of that same old woman who's been popping up everywhere. Long story short, there are bird-like shapeshifters at the party who look like something out of the Sarah Jane Adventures from like 15 plus years ago. The bird people are there to cosplay. They kill people they find interesting and replace them so they can go cosplay as that person. They love drama, so the more dramatic, the better. In fact, they want to replace some royals so they can start wars with countries like Portugal. However, no mention that England was currently at war with the United States in 1813. But I guess the writers didn't care about this historical fact. The Doctor is off flirting with Discount Captain Jack when one of the bird creatures goes to replace Ruby. The Disney Doctor and Discount Jack see Ruby with the bird people. The Disney Doctor is sad and angry because Ruby got replaced while he was supposed to be watching out for her, but was off flirting instead. The Disney Doctor and Discount Jack have set a trap to send the bird people to a different dimension. The birds walk into the trap. The trap is powering up for its one and only go at sending the birds away, and Ruby reveals that she's the real Ruby. Apparently, the TARDIS can now download knowledge into your head, like how to dance or battle mode. Like this is an episode of Chuck, and Ruby has the intersect in her head. So Disney Doctor has to decide whether or not to save Ruby and free the birds, or send them all to the alternative dimension. The Disney Doctor can't send Ruby, so Discount Jack kisses the Disney Doctor goodbye and tells Disney Doctor to find him, as he leaps into the trap, pushing Ruby out and taking her place, being sent to some unknown dimension. Ruby asks the Disney Doctor about going to find Discount Jack, but the Disney Doctor says there are as many dimensions as there are atoms in the universe. And the Disney Doctor didn't even know Discount Jack's real name. He just knows he was a bounty hunter that went by the moniker of Rogue. Ruby tries to hug the Disney Doctor, but the Disney Doctor tries to avoid the hug and just move on and avoid feeling bad, but Ruby manages to hug him anyway. Ruby then walks away, and the Disney Doctor pulls a ring out of his pocket that Discount Jack had used to propose to the Disney Doctor when they tried to create a scene to attract and trap the bird people. The Disney Doctor puts the ring on his pinky, salutes the sky, and smiles. The end. Okay. So they can license and use a Kylie Minogue song and one from Lady Gaga, but they couldn't get a single Beatles song for a Beatles episode. Right. There was barely any story here, and what story was there looked like a scrap of a note from ideas bounced around to introduce Jack Harkness nearly 20 years ago. The rest of this episode was, I assume, a Bridgerton ripoff. However, I wouldn't know because I don't watch Bridgerton. Beyond the historical inaccuracies, which we all know I hate, time-related cultural references made in shows don't usually withstand the test of time. Referencing Bridgerton and some ballroom dancing show barely registers with a lot of people now, and these references will mean even less to an audience in 10 years, if this show is even around in 10 years. Because this is not the writing I'd expect from a show that expects to have people watching in 10 years. I didn't like this episode. It was heavy on the soap opera, light on the science fiction. The pacing was really bad for me. There was no mention of actual historical events of the time. And Rogue was a discount version of Captain Jack, even down to the American accent, which could have been interesting to work with, considering that in 1813, England was actually at war with America. Seriously, did these writers do any research into this time period at all? This was a huge disappointment. I didn't expect this to be good, but I didn't expect it to be this bad. It was sloppy. I don't even know what to say at this point. This makes me not want to do any more Doctor Who episodes because I don't want to watch them anymore because this is so bad. What were these writers thinking? Again, I don't care about anything else. And the fact that they had an American in England in 1813 and there was no mention of the ongoing, at that time, war, just no. No. That's too far for me. Just too far.
The only thing in this episode that mattered was that portrait.
Yeah.
Spotting that portrait of that same lady that's been sprinkled throughout different time periods. That's it. You mentioned the Beatles song back in The Devil's Chord, episode 2, and we got some comments from people saying, well, they tried to license the Beatles songs, but they just couldn't get them. Russell talked about that. Whatever. So then my argument would be against that. Devil's Chord episode didn't need to be about the Beatles. It just needed to be about some musical talent that lifted themselves above their peers and showed great talent. So they could have licensed other artists that would have fit that mold and not made this a Beatles-centric story back in episode 2. But here, they licensed the Kylie Minogue song. This was actually Kylie Minogue singing. I remember this song when it was out. Now, the Lady Gaga, I don't think vocals actually kicked in. It was just the melody of Poker Face. But I said this back in the Devil's Chord episode. So you couldn't have got a cover or even just the melody of the beginning of a Beatles song in the Devil's Chord. But Lady Gaga, you can do that. You can get the melody going for a Lady Gaga song, Poker Face. And you can license pretty much the entire Kylie Minogue song. This episode was 10 to 20% shapeshifter bird people and like 80% the Doctor flirting with Discount Jack. And I agree with you with that Discount Jack because when the Doctor and Discount Jack went on Discount Jack's ship and they were bantering back and forth, we stopped and said, doesn't that sound like something that would be the Doctor and Jack talking? The writers that were listed for this episode weren't anybody I heard of. But this felt to me like it was some sort of fanfic of somebody saying, well, what if the Doctor and Jack got together back 15 plus years ago? And this is the product that we got. Kind of like how 50 Shades of Grey was a fanfic from the Twilight series. That's what this feels like. I don't know what to say about this episode in any sort of useful way. There wasn't really anything here. The Doctor spent one evening flirting with this guy and spent the majority of the episode doing this. This bird people stuff that we're cosplaying, there was like a 20-minute window where you never even talked about that. It was just kind of pushed in the background, and then they reminded you, oh, that's actually supposed to be the main story here. And why did Ruby and the Doctor even come here in the first place? You started right in the middle of that ball, and you got nothing at the beginning to say, well, why did we come here in the first place? What was interesting about this time period and location that made the Doctor and Ruby want to come here? It just started right in the ballroom, and they never really even touched on why they were there even after the fact.
Well, I think they just wanted to go to a party. I think they were acting out their Bridgerton fantasy. I mean, really, I think that's exactly what it was. And again, for those of us who don't watch Bridgerton, what the hell was that?
Yeah, I have nothing positive to say because even that portrait, which was the only purpose of this episode, we could have done without that portrait. This episode didn't need to exist.
It shouldn't have existed.
The only reason I can think of is they're going to make this Discount Jack character a thing. The Disney Doctor put his ring on, and I think that's going to maybe pay off later on. I don't know. it was awkward when they were doing some of these things, like when Ruby was seconds away from being whisked away to some other dimension, and right when she was in peril, the Doctor decides to kiss Discount Jack.
Well, he has a passionate kiss with Discount Jack while Ruby is standing there in a trap watching, possibly about to be sent to a different dimension. I can't believe they actually thought this was good writing.
I don't know what they were thinking here. This wasn't even a complete story. Because if I had to list, give the paragraph synopsis of this episode, if you go through the Disney interface and, you put the highlight over the episode thumbnail, the episode synopsis should be, the Doctor spends most of the episode flirting with some new person he met. Also, bird people found. And I say this because when you and I were watching this and I said, the way they're introducing this Discount Jack, it reminded me just a little bit of Voyage of the Damned when they had Astrid, which is funny because that was played by Kylie Minogue, who they licensed her music in here, but they had that sort of flirting going on between the Tenant Doctor and Astrid. But the difference was that was 15 to 20% flirting and 80%, hey, let's get out of this bad situation we're in on the ship. Whereas this story was 15 to 20% bird people cosplaying and 80% the Doctor flirting with Discount Jack. I did not sign up to watch a soap opera. That is not why I watch Doctor Who. Usually in these episodes that have been airing this season, I can find something to talk about that's positive. Last week, half the episode, Molly and I talked quite positively of. This episode, I think, was worse than the Space Babies episode. Because at least the Space Babies episode, as stupid as it was, it told a story. The story actually wasn't just about flirting with people. It was actually a story about something. Because this story was just flirting. I don't know any other way to describe this. It would be like if Voyage of the Damned, if the entire episode was the Tenant Doctor and Astrid, 80% of it of just them flirting. And then the ship getting ready to crash onto Earth was irrelevant. That was just a side story.
Well, and if somebody had gotten killed while the Doctor was off flirting with Astrid, because he was, more interested in that than actually taking care of those people. That didn't happen in Voyage of the Damned. I mean, Ruby wasn't really dead in this episode either, but there were a few minutes where the Doctor thought she was dead. So, again, he was neglecting being the caretaker that he promised Ruby's mom he was going to be.
Which they even had a flashback. I don't remember if that was ever stated in narrative, but it was a flashback within this story.
Yeah.
Of him promising to take care of her.
Yeah. So this Doctor looks all sorts of irresponsible. He was more interested in flirting than making sure to fulfill his promise to Ruby's mom and to actually look out for Ruby, some best friend he is. I mean, really, what was this crap? The episode actually started with two guys talking to each other, one of them boasting about how he was banging the other guy's sister and all the different places he banged her. Seriously, I can't believe they actually made this. For me, this is the worst episode this season. It was a mess. I'm actually still in shock. I watched this last night, so this was 12 hours ago that I watched this, maybe a little more than that, and I'm still just in awe of how bad this was.
I think this was worse than any of the Jodie Whittaker episodes. Because I didn't like a lot of the Whittaker episodes. Heck, I didn't like most. I think I only liked the very first episode. But at least they were telling stories. It wasn't about flirting for 80% of the episode or putting your companions in danger, or you think one died and then you're like, oh, well, that's fine. My companion, through neglect, caused her to die. I'll just flirt some more here. It'll be fine. I'll flirt my way to forget this. So when I'm saying that I think this was worse than any of the Jodie Whittaker episodes, and I don't think those were very good, that's saying something. And if this Discount Jack, if they're going to try to make him an ongoing thing, yeah, good luck with that. Good luck with that.
Nothing against this current actor, but he's no John Barrowman.
No, he didn't have any of the charisma.
Oh, yeah, because I'll just be honest. I loved the Captain Jack character. I really did. He was charismatic. He There was just something about him. You couldn't take your eyes off of him when he was on screen. This guy, again, he's a pale imitation of Captain Jack. And like you said, old man, this felt like it was fan fiction written by someone who wanted to reimagine that first meeting between the Doctor and Jack and have Jack and the Doctor pair off.
When they were on his ship bantering with that American accent, because again, why did they have to give this guy an American accent? They didn't have to do that. I don't know the actor. Maybe the actor is American. But why'd you have to cast him? You know these comparisons were going to be made. So why did you do it? There had to be a reason.
I don't know. Because also in that introductory episode, The Empty Child, where we first met Jack, it was war. It was World War II. But in this episode, it was 1813. It was the War of 1812 going on, but no mention of the war. I can't... Again, I'm just in awe of how poorly written this was. I'm shocked that they made this. Like, where did all their money go, I guess, into making those bird people? But some of them looked laughably bad.
All of them looked bad. I don't think any of them. They had that one that was like blue-gray with the big eyebrows, and it looked like a Muppet, like from Sesame Street.
Yeah.
And when they were morphing from human form to that bird form, it looked like something from the Sarah Jane adventures, like you mentioned. And I'm not saying, oh, like if Sarah Jane existed now, the adventures, like, no. Like the effects that they would do back in the 2000 noughts for Sarah Jane, that's what they were doing here. That morphing effect looked like it was dated, at least 15 years dated.
Yeah.
So I don't think any of the bird people looked good. They all looked stupid. And as I said in the last episode, one of the things I like about Russell is he's able to pull off the absurd and still make it plausible. And his name wasn't on this, so all I can think of is maybe if Russell was writing this episode, he could have pulled this off a little bit better, because he has proven skill to pull off the absurd and balance it with some sort of stakes in the episode. But this just felt like a cartoon. All I can think of, much like the Meep, I remember after the Meep episode, several of our UK viewers informed us about the Meep and the comic that the Meep was in, and even the song. So maybe these bird people are like that. There's some comic or something from the 90s or 80s that I don't know about. But the ones that were on screen here, they had no personality, no motivation other than they like to cosplay.
Even if that's the case, the balance of this episode was really off with the storytelling, as far as the actual story of those bird people versus the Doctor off flirting with Discount Jack. And ultimately, even if Russell didn't get the writing credit on this episode, the buck stops with him because he's the showrunner. So this, ultimately, if this wasn't up to standard, he should have done something about it.
He should have stepped in, because the absurd nature of those bird creatures, maybe Russell could have spun that in a way, kind of like the Slovene, because they were pretty ridiculous too, but he was able to spin them to make them to be a threat, even though they looked fairly ridiculous. There was nothing here that had any stakes at all for me. It was just, yeah, okay. And that shows with the runtime that storyline was given, which was about 20% of the episode. So they even knew there wasn't a lot there to work with. It was just some background thing so the Doctor could have his flirting with Discount Jack.
This was just bad. And I really don't have anything else to say about it.
No, I don't either. I mean, I'm not a history buff like you are, but there are some other questions about historical accuracy I would have, but I'm not going to voice them because it doesn't matter. If the big ones aren't going to be answered, any of my little ones aren't going to matter either. So all I'm going to say is this was a waste of an episode. Other than the 9 different ways I took your sister at the beginning, which was offensive, the rest of it wasn't offensive per se. It was just pointless.
It was a mess.
This episode didn't need to exist.
Yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm only going to give this one a 1 because, again, like I said a few episodes ago, the audio mixing was okay on this. I could see what was going on. So from a basic technical standpoint, they get 1 point just for doing the cinematography and audio correctly. That's it. This is the lowest rating I can give this and still give credit for basic technical competency. So this is a 1 out of 10. I'd go back and rewatch last week's episode, watch the first 20 minutes of Dot and Bubble, because I still think that first 20 minutes was a pretty good episode, but that's just me. Skip this.
I'll give it a 1 out of 10, mostly because I liked Ruby's dress. I think Millie Gibson, she really looked good in this episode. But if you're going to research the outfits for the era, a simple search, England 1813, should have revealed that they were at friggin' war. And if you're not even going to do the most basic research, it makes me think that they just went over to the Bridgerton set and borrowed a bunch of costumes, and they didn't do any real research themselves at all.
All I can think of, because I'm an American over here, maybe Bath, England was this detached, scandalous place, because they even mentioned in the episode about, oh, this will be so scandalous. So maybe they were just so detached from reality historically, maybe Bath, England. I mean, our UK viewers, help us out here, because I don't know anything about this time period beyond what was taught in high school, and I definitely don't know Bath, England. So if you can share, maybe this was just kind of a really detached from reality place where all they did was really weird things. And so maybe that's why we're supposed to just say, no, they're doing their own thing here. Or who knows? I mean, maybe this is Bath, England is a reference to some other pop culture thing I'm not getting.
Yeah, that could be. And if that's the case, yes, please explain that to us. Because those of us on the other side of the pond, well, we know damn well we were at war at that point in time. So, whatever. Anyway, I've got nothing else to say about this episode. Obviously, I'm sure you guys have some things to say about it. So go ahead and just leave the comments below.
Take care.